Welcome to today's edition of 3 Minute Halacha as we continue with the study of memachik, the melacha that was involved in smoothing surfaces. As you'll recall, the melacha of memachik involved removing something from a surface to make that surface smooth. The classic example is removing hairs from a hide to make the leather smooth. However, a subset of memachik is mimareach. Instead of removing something, memareach is where you add something. You'd spread something over a surface to make that surface smoother. Again, if you took some wax to spread it over a surface and fill in cracks to make it smoother. The Magen Avram, however, in Siman Shin Tet Zayin, Siv Katan Chavdalad, notes an exception to this idea. And he said that if the entire purpose was to absorb that additional something that you're putting over a surface, not to leave it on top so that it's smoother, it would not be a violation of mimareach. The example that he's speaking of was a case of a person who unfortunately encountered some spit or something on the ground and was prohibited from rubbing that in with his foot, with his shoe, not because of mimareach, but because, as the Shulchan Aruch points out, you'd be making gumot, you'd be making some depressions within the earth consciously, which would be prohibited on Shabbat. The Maharsham uses this Magen Avraham as the basis of allowing a person to put ointment on their skin, something that is viscous and normally would smooth the skin by creating that additional layer. And yet if it's rubbed entirely into the skin, according to the Maharsham, there's no violation of Memareach. This also is the position of the Shmirat Shabbat Kilchata in chapter 33, note 58, quoted in the name of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that if you're smoothing something into the skin where it's completely absorbed in the skin, it would be permitted on Shabbat. However, Dayan Weiss in his Minchat Yitzchak in the 6th volume, the 20th tshuva, while he agrees in principle with the Maharsham, makes one exception. He says if it's the type of ointment that would normally not be entirely smoothed into the skin, rubbed into the skin, but rather a person wouldn't mind if a little bit remains on the surface. In that case, it would be prohibited because once something could be left on the surface and sometimes normally would be left on the surface and not completely rubbed in, that would be a violation of Memareach. In general, there is this basis to be able to use some kinds of creams or ointments as long as you absorb it entirely in the skin. That was the position of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, based on a Maharsham, based on the Magen Avraham.